Well, kia ora, good afternoon everyone. It's great to see you all and it's wonderful to be here and have the opportunity to speak with you all today. Can I just acknowledge Simon and all of the Auckland Chamber and for hosting us here today in partnership with KiwiBank. Simon, your advocacy on behalf of business here in Auckland has absolutely been relentless. You keep making the case and beating the drum for more productivity and more prosperity, and I think the country is much better served by all your efforts, so thank you, mate, for what you do. Can I just also acknowledge National Party President Sylvia Wood, who's here, alongside our national ministers and national MPs that are here today, particularly Nicola Willis, Chris Bishop, Simeon Brown, Paul Goldsmith, Louise Upston, Judith Collins, Shane Retty, Mark Mitchell, Simon Watts, and also Chris Pink. And can I acknowledge the Auckland-based MPs that are here, Dan Bidwar, Paolo Garcia, Cameron Brewer, Carlos Chong, Melissa Lee, Greg Fleming and Nancy Liu. But to all of you, can I say welcome to 2026. It's going to be a truly great year. The economy is growing, the kids are almost back at school again, and after a great Kiwi summer break, and just like Kiwis up and down the country, I can tell you the National Party is knuckling down and getting back to work. And I guess I have one very, very simple message for you today, and that is that National is fixing the basics and building the future. And so today I want to firstly speak about the progress that we've made for New Zealanders so far, and then I'll spend a little bit more time speaking about the global backdrop and National's priorities heading into this year's election as we present our plan to then build out the future. I think all of us in this room would say it's been a challenging period for Kiwis and New Zealand businesses over the past 5 years. And yes, we've made a lot of progress. Inflation now has fallen from 7% to just 3%. As a result, interest rates have dropped considerably, from families refixing from mortgages that started with a 7 to those that are now starting with a 4 or a 5. And business confidence and consumer confidence has risen significantly, and that is translating into greater levels of investment and also retail activity. And I know many of you will be frustrated, as I have been, that this recovery, now starting to blossom nationwide, has taken so long to get traction. And for many months, it felt like the improving economic conditions at farm gates and on the main streets of Christchurch and Queenstown would never actually filter through here to Queen Street, Newmarket and Lambton Quay. And in the middle of last year, you'll remember, when emerging green shoots were rapidly cut down by tariff shocks and global uncertainty, it felt like we were back at square one. And that period was difficult, especially here in Auckland, but I remain of the view that we got the balance right. At the time, there were calls for a big fiscal stimulus and for us to open up the immigration gates and therefore pump up house prices. But as I spoke about it last year, we can't risk repeating the sugar rush economics of the past. Rapidly rising house prices and more borrowing might have felt good in the moment, but in the long run, those actions ultimately just make us poorer as a society and an economy. And I understand that that's been challenging, particularly in the near term, but it is encouraging a critical shift that needs to happen in the New Zealand economy, away from speculation and towards productive economic activity that supports higher incomes and more jobs. And so it was really positive to see that in the latest GDP data published in December, it was manufacturing, it was exports, it was business investment underpinning the bounce back. And it's been 2 years of hard work, really hard work, in government, from businesses large and small, and in fact from every single New Zealander. But I have to tell you, I feel more confident than ever that the recovery has now arrived and Kiwis can look forward to a year which is brighter than the past few. Just last week we saw NZIER's latest survey. It showed that business confidence is at its highest level since 2014. Business New Zealand's PMI indicator released on Friday shows growth in manufacturing is stronger than at any time since December 2021, and it's higher than many of our global peers. And while last year there were pockets of optimism in the South Island and in the rural economy, conditions now seem to be improving nationwide. And according to Westpac, Auckland is now the strongest region for consumer confidence. And in the construction industry, which has been particularly challenged and struggled through a period of high interest rates and financial pressure, a recovery also appears to be underway. Building consents are rising. They're up around about 20% in the last 6 months. And according to Seek, job advertisements in construction have risen by around 30% in the last year. So in short, there's real cause for optimism, and my focus, and that of my government, is now translating that optimism into real results for New Zealanders in 2026, with more jobs, higher incomes, and the best possible shot at a better life. Now, sensible spending and tight fiscal management is a critical part of our economic agenda. At the half-year update in December, the government confirmed a path back to surplus in 2028-29, supported by tight budgets in coming years. However, tight budgets have actually become standard practice for this government. And in just the last 2 years, our Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, has delivered savings of around $11 billion per annum. And that is the equivalent to around $5,000 for every single household in the country. And I know generating those savings hasn't been easy, but they have provided us the necessary headroom to deliver tax relief to all Kiwis, invest in the frontline services that New Zealanders rely on, and maintain a path back to surplus over the forecast period. The bottom line is New Zealand needs to get its finances in order if it is to achieve a long-term improvement in its economic prospects. And that's why there will be more savings in this year's budget and no room for extravagant election promises. And I want us to be very straight with each other, because I think any party that wants to ramp up spending is being economically irresponsible. Because the only way to spend more money is actually to borrow it or to raise more taxes. And borrowing would lift our debt to dangerous levels, while raising taxes would actually snuff out the recovery and send Kiwis overseas. So National is going to campaign on being responsible managers of the economy who make the right decisions to fix the basics and to build the future. Now, we've also had to fix the basics on education too. And like many of you in this room, I had the privilege of an outstanding state education here in New Zealand that enabled me to go and work and live all around the world. And as Prime Minister, I am determined to give that same shot in life to every single Kiwi kid growing up in New Zealand today. But when we entered office, we had more than half of our kids not attending school regularly. We have 80% of our 13-year-olds not where they need to be at on maths, and half of them were not where they need to be at on reading. And in just 2 short years, we've achieved a huge amount. Yes, we've banned the mobile phones and we've mandated an hour of reading, maths and writing. But I want to say thanks to Erica Stanford, we've also delivered a new structured approach to teaching literacy and numeracy and introduced whole new curriculums for maths and English in our primary schools. And already the number of new entrants achieving where they should be in phonics has gone from a dismal 36% to 58%. The number of students exceeding expectations has doubled. And there's a lot more for us to do, but there is no doubt about it. We are fixing the basics in education. And if I take law and order alongside the economy, you'll remember 2 years ago, the extent of lawlessness throughout New Zealand was a major issue for Kiwis who were incredibly frustrated at it at the last election. And between 2017 and 2023, violent crime rose 30%, gang membership increased by 50%, retail crime had doubled, and ram raids had quadrupled. And many of the business owners in this room will have had their own stores robbed, or dairies and liquor stores in their own communities ram raided or robbed at knife point. So I want to say thanks to the efforts of Mark Mitchell and Paul Goldsmith, we embarked on a common sense program of reform to keep Kiwis safe at home, at work and in the community. And so we've cracked down on gangs and banned patches in public. We have delivered tougher sentencing laws so offenders do real time. And we have given more powers to police and put more of them out on the beat. And we still know there's a lot more for us to do, especially here in the Auckland CBD, where the government and Auckland Council have agreed to focus more attention. But the overall results have been exceptional. We have 38,000 fewer victims of violent crime. Youth offending is down by 16%, and ram raids are down by 85%. So when it comes to violent and retail crime, we're fixing the basics there too. In short, we are in a stronger position as a country than we were just 2 short years ago. But as positive as some of those results have been, just fixing the basics isn't enough. Yes, because we have an obligation to leave a lasting legacy of prosperity and opportunity for our children and for our grandchildren. but also because in a more volatile, unstable and uncertain world, we can't afford to be complacent either. For 70 years now, smaller countries like New Zealand have been able to manage our relationships with other countries according to established rules. At the same time, the rising tide of free and open trade has encouraged greater economic integration, dynamic new middle classes in the Indo-Pacific, and a wealth of new opportunities for New Zealand's export industries. But today, our global rules-based system is rupturing. And I've spoken previously about the three big shifts that I think make for challenging times ahead for our world. First, we are seeing rules giving way to power. Previously, we could count on countries respecting the UN Charter, the law of the sea, and the rules of global trade. But in an age of sharper competition, we're seeing a pattern of countries respecting international law only when it suits them and ignoring the rules when it doesn't. Second, we are witnessing a shift from economics to security. National security demands are expanding. Governments need to protect their people and their assets against economic coercion, foreign interference, cyber attacks, and terrorism. And in the Indo-Pacific region, our region, there's a rising risk of a dangerous miscalculation. And so the bottom line is a country can't have prosperity without security, not less when the tools of commerce themselves require protection. And thirdly, efficiency is giving way to resilience. Our future prosperity can no longer just be treated as an inevitable byproduct of global rules and institutions. Trading arrangements are becoming less certain and less efficient as businesses adapt to a world where tariffs and protectionism, once out of fashion, have made a raging comeback. So against this shifting international backdrop, our government has acted carefully and decisively. It's why, in concert with our friends and our partners, we are using what agency we have to champion our values and our interests out on the world stage, supporting Ukraine to resist Russia's illegal invasion, and bringing the EU and the CPTPP together to reinforce the rules of global trade. It's also why the government has agreed to significantly lift defence expenditure in the coming years. Because despite decades of underinvestment, the men and women, the incredible men and women of the New Zealand Defence Force do an absolutely outstanding job, keeping Kiwis safe and promoting peace and security in our region. But in a more dangerous world, it would be reckless to continue that trend and to keep banking the dividends of peace. So lifting defence spending means New Zealand can keep doing our part, contributing to regional security, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief efforts. And in a more competitive and cutthroat world, it also supports New Zealand to develop our own defence industry here at home. Finally, we are capitalising on the geopolitical moment by acting very decisively to deepen our portfolio of relationships, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. In just the last 2 years, we've upgraded our partnerships with Singapore, Vietnam, Korea, all of the ASEAN countries, and a range of other Asian friends. We've maximised the opportunities from the EU and the UK FTAs, while also concluding new deals with the UAE and the GCC. And then just before Christmas, we finalised a new feature to our relationship with India, with its 1.4 billion people and rapidly growing economy. When many said it was impossible, we just got on with the job of concluding a landmark free trade agreement with India in less than a year. Yep, going to be great. And that agreement eliminates and reduces tariffs on 95% of New Zealand's exports, with almost 57% duty-free on day one of the agreement coming into force. And that's making our businesses more competitive, creating jobs here at home, and lifting incomes. We might live in volatile times, but this government is nonetheless working at pace to position and to secure New Zealand's interests offshore. We're out there hustling and talking to different partners, forging deeper defence and economic partnerships. But New Zealand isn't alone. Every country in the world, all 195 of them, are facing the same challenges. And New Zealand, relative to other countries, I believe, is incredibly well positioned to do well. Virtually everybody wants to do more with New Zealand. We have what the world wants, we are a reliable partner, we have the values to which most of the world aspires, and we're an increasingly confident nation with rising ambition. And that's ultimately good for our economy, and it's ultimately good for our country's future. But in a more volatile and uncertain world, it underscores the importance of controlling what we can control. And the more we are building our economy here at home, And the more that we are developing and diversifying those relationships abroad, the stronger New Zealand gets. We can control the energy and ambition we bring to building a future for every single New Zealander here at home. We can control the posture and the confidence we bring to asserting our interests offshore, making the case for our values and our future. But more than ever, now is the moment for decisive action. Because whether you're driving trucks, whether you're making coffee, whether you're herding cattle, or whether you're getting ready to take on the world, I want us to unleash the extraordinary potential of this country so that everyone can get ahead. Higher incomes, more jobs, and a better shot at the Kiwi dream. And ultimately, that's why I came to politics, because I want us to leave a legacy of prosperity and ambition and hope and opportunity for our children and our grandchildren. I want kids growing up in Christchurch like me that can see a real future for themselves here at home, raising a family, building a career, or starting a business. And so for 2 years, National has been fixing the basics. And now as we head into election this year, National will campaign on a bold plan to build the future and to leave a legacy of prosperity and opportunity for future generations. And that will include 3 big changes that we've already announced and are partly underway: KiwiSaver reform, NCEA reform, and RMA reform. And each of those represents a generational challenge facing the country, and each have actually been put off for far too long by governments unable to or unwilling to confront them. But the country is impatient of waiting for a future that without serious reform may never arrive. And so National has a vision of a more prosperous, confident future with more opportunity for every single New Zealander, and we intend to make that vision a reality. So first, KiwiSaver. If we're serious about building the future, we need to increase our level of ambition for retirement savings. And you might have seen late last year, National launched this first election policy to gradually increase employer and employee contributions over time, rising to 6% each by 2032, and a combined contribution of 12% matching Australia. And that's a policy driven by several objectives. First, to support New Zealanders' financial security against a backdrop of an ageing society and an inevitable lift in the retirement age. Second, to establish a spine of national capital that's sheltered from the winds of financial and political change offshore and available to invest in the businesses and the infrastructure here at home that we will need to become a richer society. And third, it's about improving the returns from work and to make New Zealand a more attractive place to build a career and raise a family by closing the gap with Australia on superannuation contributions. Now, we've announced these changes early so that employers and employees have plenty of time to prepare, but over time we expect that they will lead to much larger retirement balances. So for a 21-year-old earning $65,000 a year and making default contributions in line with the changes already delivered at this year's budget, they could expect to retire with around $1 million in their KiwiSaver account by the time they turn 65. Following National's proposed changes, that same individual could expect that their KiwiSaver balance would be around $400,000 larger, or around $1.4 million in total, assuming they increase their contributions to the plan to higher default rates over time. Now that's a big change. It's critical to our plan to build the future, and it's only going to happen with a national government after this year's election. Now second is the proposed end of NCEA. Education is an absolutely critical part of our plan to achieve a step change in the New Zealand economy, enabling investment in digitalisation, technology, and ultimately higher paying jobs that improve our collective quality of life. And as I spoke about earlier, our government's education reform program is already well underway in primary and intermediate schools. But when those students reach secondary school, we want them to have a national qualification that ultimately receives and reflects the same high standards and ambition we expect throughout their earlier years of education. So in August last year, Erica Stanford and I announced our plans to do exactly that and replace NCEA. The truth is that while NCEA was designed to be flexible, for many of our students that flexibility has encouraged a focus on just getting the qualification, coming at the cost of actually developing the learning and the critical skills and the knowledge that they need for future study, training or employment. We have consultation underway right now on the new qualification, which will come with clearer grades out of 100, stronger vocational pathways and high standards for literacy and numeracy. And while Erica is working around the clock to make these changes a reality as quickly as possible, they won't be bedded in for some time because the first cohort to sit the new qualifications are only starting high school in the coming weeks. Now, these are big changes that are critical to our plan to build the future. And if you want education reform that gives your children the very, very best shot in life, then you need a national government. Now, the third issue is resource management reform. And I have to say, in 2 years, Chris Bishop has delivered more reform to the resource management environment than I believe any other minister has in decades. A suite of changes to national direction, enabling greater development of housing, renewable energy, aquaculture and mining. Fast-track legislation now consenting major projects like the gold mine at Waihi or the port expansion here in Auckland in a matter of months rather than years. And then 2 new bills designed to unshackle growth and development in this country by replacing the RMA in its entirety. And those bills are expected to pass later this year following a robust select committee process. But once they do, we're expecting immediate results, with around half of all resource consents no longer being required, promoting growth and development from day one. But passing that legislation, I have to say, is just the start, because over time, more and more of the regime will be managed through national standards, setting out the guardrails for the development of everything from agriculture to mining to apartment buildings. And I'll be very blunt. I want, and I think you should want, national ministers writing those rules so that we have a resource management regime which allows New Zealanders to build the future. And I think the only way to build that future is with a national government. So in conclusion, I want to say National is on a mission to fix the basics and build the future, and we have made tremendous progress so far. An end to the era of wasteful spending, supporting lower inflation and therefore lower interest rates. More visible policing and a tougher stance on law and order, driving down violent crime, retail crime, ram raids and youth offending. Stronger achievement in our classrooms, whether you're just starting school or needing an opportunity to catch up. And now we're building out the future. Growing the economy to create more jobs and more opportunities for Kiwis with rising exports, investment and also productivity. Spending your money carefully so we don't burden our grandchildren with even more debt. Upgrading the roads and schools and the hospitals that you rely on, and delivering resource management reform that makes it easier for your businesses to get to construction sooner. Supporting New Zealanders' financial security for the long term with even greater levels of savings and investment. All of it means more hope, more opportunity, more ambition, and ultimately greater prosperity so that you and your family can get ahead. Thank you very much.